Okay, we're live. Good evening, Augustonians. Welcome back to Lit Friday. If you're new to the program, my name is Jessica Lene. I'm a poet, prose writer, and art journalist, as well as the curator and host of Lit Friday. The virtual program from the August Wilson African American Cultural Center happens on the final Friday of each month, and we engage creators of all kinds from the African diaspora in conversation about their recent projects and their connection to contemporary issues. Stay up to date on the program by following the August Wilson African American Cultural Center on Instagram at August Wilson Cultural Center. And you can also follow me on Instagram at hanginThere_kitty. And now I have the pleasure of introducing, again, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, photographer, poet, and multidisciplinary artist, Emmai Alaquiva. Emmai was last with me on Lit Friday for a conversation about his interdisciplinary and interactive exhibition, Optic Voices, Mama's Boys. He is with us again to discuss his latest documentary project, Ebony Canal. Emmai Alaquiva is manufacturing the future of digital art across the multiverse of mindful media. The sky is not the limit, says Alaquiva, a four-time, again, Emmy Award-winning film director, photographer, and AWAACC August Wilson African American Cultural Center Build Artists in Residence, which launched the national exhibit of Optic Voices, Mama's Boys. So I am happy you're here to speak again with me about this other humongous, very important, very necessary project, the Ebony Canal.
Yeah.
Tell us about what the project is, what stage it's at, and where it's going next.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. You are doing a phenomenal job, and you're just really, really taking us to the next level. So thank you for the outstanding work that you're doing. I also want to take this time to express my deepest appreciation for the August Wilson African American Cultural Center for really providing the pillars that are needed to build new foundations of artists around the world, not just Pittsburgh. And to have been the August Wilson African American Cultural Center's Built Residency inaugural year was just absolutely outstanding. So I just wanted to at least start with that. So my project that I've been working on after Optic Voices, which is along the lines of advocacy and allyship, was the Ebony Canal. The Ebony Canal, I came up with that term because ebony is the color of a dark shade or a dark brown shade. It's the ebony. And then canal, I wanted to sort of have that poetic name that you automatically knew that you could connect one body of life to another body of life. And when you think about sort of that metaphor of the waves, the journey, even the canal of a womb, you really begin to sort of tap into what's needed from an artistic standpoint, um, a clinical standpoint, but also a cultural standpoint. And the Ebony Canal is a documentary film that examines the historic portal between disparities of infant mortality and the current state of maternal health orbiting Black and Brown women. Despite the undercurrents, the mission aims to foster a new wave of solution driven practices. And the vision is to move infant mortality into something that we never want to have to worry about, in addition to maternal health. And we just want to move that journey ahead. In a film like this, the power of the arts is so incredible. When you go into environments like hospitals and organizations and things of that nature, a lot of the data kind of goes over the head. But when you use the power of the arts to really process that clinical and turn it into something cultural that can be downloaded into masses, you get films like The Ebony Canal, which is probably one of the most transformative pieces I've ever worked on.
When I read the title, when we spoke about it at the Black Bottom Film Festival, when I found out that it was happening, and I was like, no, you have to be on Lit Friday. I want to talk about all of this with you. I also thought about like the spiritual element when it comes to the Black experience because Mami Huata, West Africa, Central Africa, those traditions we inherit. It
Hmm.
also kind of connects in what it speaks about to our experience about how we arrived here and how that's the basis for the issues that we experience as Black women when it comes to maternal health and infant mortality rates. So it's like a powerful title that's able to encapsulate what you're talking about in terms of the medical, the poetic, the imagistic, but also thinking about the spiritual, because a lot of the traditions that we come from and rebuilt on this side of the Atlantic really talk about the aquatic, the G force of the womb as a spiritual experience as well. And I think that that's also very like broad, but in a way that can like capture the imaginations of a lot of different kinds of people that come to make up the Black community, especially in the Americas.
Absolutely, and when you think about it, we had a chance to interview Dr. Wanda Barfield at the CDC. You know, Black and brown infants have 2 to 3 times the infant mortality rate as the other counterparts, according to the study at the CDC. So when we talked about putting together this story, we wanted to talk to the RAND corporations. We wanted to travel to the University of Chicago. We wanted to travel to Stanford, where they're really, really doing exceptional work at really digging into the data of how we sort of got here. Of course, there's the environmental issues. There's the socioeconomic issues as well. There's food deserts. There's all of these things that really come together to sort of create the problem. But we also have that in, but we also have some of the racial disparities that are attached to where we are today. And we wanted to not only follow the experts, but we followed 4 women, 4+ women. We followed um uh uh we follow excuse me, we follow the 4 women, one in Pittsburgh and 3 around the country. That was Larissa Lang, Alana Isola Daly, Mariah Peoples. We also interviewed Dr. Brenda McDonald as well to really carry their stories and film them over these 9 months. Because when you think about these 9 months, and we broke the film down in 9 sections to
Mm.
represent 9 months of giving birth. Because what we want people to know is that this is about infant mortality in the journey of giving birth to solutions. So we broke the film down in almost like 3 sections, even though there is a fourth trimester that a lot of people don't realize is there's that fourth trimester that the mother goes through, and then the steps that we need to take in order to keep babies alive for that first year. So
Mhm.
that's almost like a fourth trimester. But we have 3 core pillars with 3 attached to each of those. So that's where you get the 3 and the 9. So when people watch this film, each section gives birth. So when you hear the music, when you see the images, when you see this film and you see women floating through water with their bellies,
Mhm.
you think about that birth. You know what I mean? And that's what we wanted to do with this particular piece. And a film like this doesn't take 3, 4, 6 months.
No.
We've been working on this for about a good solid 2.5 years because you can't rush a story like this, Jessica,
Mm.
right? You can't force this. You have to slowly give birth. And with this film, that first trimester where you have the headaches, you have the pain, you have the sorrow. Then you get into that second where, like, okay, I'm kind of used to this. All right, I'm getting ready. And right now, where this film is, we're about to give birth to this film. So we're ready. We got things in place, things that we want to do, and we're wrapping around saving Black and brown babies. We understand the maternal aspect of this, but we have to save as many babies as we can.
Absolutely. When I was watching the opening, we were talking about this paradisical, aquatic, beautifully directed scene, flowing cloth, the beautiful pregnant women floating in the water, getting out from, having something else to support being in the water, help support the extra weight.
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
was I couldn't help but think of just like the history. It really shook me. It's only been about 4 or 5 years since they took down the statue of J. Marion Sims on the University of Pittsburgh campus, who's supposed to be the father of gynecology. For the audience, if you haven't heard the history, the speculum that's used during exams, gynecological exams, was actually developed and tested on three enslaved African descended women, Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha, by J. Marion Sims without their consent, without their permission. And so, in a society that didn't allow other women, that protected to death other women's privacy around their bodies, Black women's bodies were the staging ground for all of the medicalization of gender, sex, and all of the solutions that we have now for mothers began with that kind of brutality. And it seems to just keep rearing its head. So this documentary is really like, it's standing firm in front of this almost nightmarish trajectory that we've seen Black women again and again and again, with beauty, grace, determination, communal support, just work through, overcome by giving birth to their children.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And here's the thing, Jessica, it's going to take all of us. When doing this film, there was so much anger. There was so much like, oh, you know, we got to do this, we got to do that. How dare they? How dare they? We understand sort of that crunchy area where there's a emotional conflict, uh, the complication in the complicated relationship that Black women have, just with America in general.
Mhm.
We understand that that's there, but best believe that this documentary film has a very well-rounded approach to how do we tackle these elements together. We did speak with Dr. Cooper Owens at UConn. We did speak with Kimberly Seals Ellers, who has, the Earth app, taking the B off for bias,
Bias.
right? We did speak to, individuals who, you know, in the thick of these things, are victims. And we speak with individuals right here in the city of Pittsburgh that understand that we have a long way to go. But you know what? The long way to go is what we have to do together.
Mm.
It's not going to be a situation where you float on that boat, I float on this boat over here, and then my man's in them, they back there somewhere. How do we get on a comprehensive ship to move the needle forward? That is exactly why it's called the Ebony Canal. We have to take this journey together.
Absolutely. And to
So,
the benefit of everybody,
it
our
is.
safety and our health is the safety and health of everybody. Tell me
Yes.
about the balance, Emmai, because you're speaking about balance, and this is one of the striking parts of the documentary. The emotional journey I experienced. It brought me to that anger. It brought me to the personal and the enraged, but it also brought me an incredible amount of joy, an incredible amount of pride listening to the women that have been interviewed across their pregnancies. And it has it's so balanced in the variety of emotions that it conjures in the viewer. And I want to know, as a filmmaker, Emmy Award winning
Yes.
director, an art director, how do you strike that balance? How did you do that?
So, striking a balance, first of all, I want to give it to my team. I want to give it to the outstanding folks at the Richard King Mellon Foundation who are doing exceptional work to support these initiatives. Um, it was very difficult because here I am, a Black man not really knowing a whole bunch about this subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
But Jessica, when I dug in, it dug into me. I started thinking about generations before me. How was my, great grandma, all the way back to Africa?
Mm-hmm.
How was that journey? And then I began to tap into, my mom, my grandmother, you know, knowing that my grandmother had my mother at the age of 13,
Mm-hmm.
my mother having my sister at the age of 14.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot that's missing. So when we talk about balance, I had to respectfully start reading as much as I've ever read, listening to Black women, listening to what's on their hearts, what's on their minds, but also listening to the data and the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Jay-Z said, numbers don't lie. Check the scoreboard.
Mm-hmm.
And when I spoke with a lot of experts, we got a lot of scores that we couldn't run from. We can't run from the data. We can't get too wrapped up in the emotion that we forget the data. So when I spoke to Dr. Wanda Barfield, she kept it a bean with me and said, here's the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And here are the numbers as far as why. And then when I spoke with the women, when we followed the women's pregnancies and saw what they went through, woohoo! And from all types of backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we started the balance of tapping into the individuals that they were surrounded by. We had to talk to the fathers. We had to go down and interview Lamont Rucker, actor Lamont Rucker at Hampton University, because there was something on his heart to be able to speak about fathers. And we spoke to Charles Johnson in Atlanta, and we have a section where fathers have to talk about how babies are 25% more likely to survive when that father figure is there, whether it's a father or a partner.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we talk about to Rep Latasha D. Mays, we talk about, reproductive justice, but it all comes back to infant mortality. And why are Black babies dying at 3 times more likely than their counterparts? So doing all of this research and putting all this time together, you have to have a balance. You can't put a film like this that's out of whack, that's off balance. Because you know what'll happen? Let me take this film and let me put it back. I'll watch it sometime later. So
Mm-hmm.
when you watched it, you went on an emotional journey. Just imagine what Black women, the emotional journey that Black women go on. Just imagine the journey that, children who don't have a voice and never ever had the opportunity to take breath. So me as an artist, I have a responsibility to provide a voice for voices that will never hear ever. That is my job as an artist. I'm not necessarily, you can call me a film director and all that. That's cool. I'm a cinematic poet. I tell stories through the lens or a piece of glass that's about a half-inch thick,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm supported around an amazing team like Awake.
Absolutely. And so I wanted to go back a little bit because I want to connect Optic Voices and Ebony Canal. There's a lot of continuity here, and they're both a mixture of activism and art, or, artivism is the term that we get from, like Chicano feminist, like public guerrilla art action, right? They gave us the term active artivism. So
Yeah.
as an artist, how do you see activism and art informing one another? There are some artists that will say that art is not activism and that it is not a substitute for political action. But your work seems to say something different, and you just started getting into that. So tell us some more about how these two, what some people like to say are separate things, meet
Sure.
in your work, because they meet seamlessly. And Optic Voices is a part of that, making a statement about mothers losing their sons to police brutality, needless kind of
Sure.
violence, and also the Ebony Canal, another kind of needless violence when it comes to breaking the bond between Black women and their children.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Great question. I'll back it up even before Optic Voices. Before Optic Voices, I put together a PSA called Unspeakable. And it was a Black Lives Matter PSA for the deaf and hard of hearing community.
Hmm.
And a lot of times their voices were left out. We released it July 15th, 2020. It went viral, 300 million people worldwide, 60 countries. And my 8-year-old daughter, who helped inspire that PSA, was on Good Morning America talking about her voice. So, and when I dug a little deeper, I realized that advocacy comes from a Greek root word called avocare, and it means to add a voice. What I wanted to do with my work was add a voice. So when we done the unspeakable, we got an opportunity to really do something monumentous and groundbreaking with the August Wilson African American Cultural Center in putting together Optic Voices, which got its very first launch in 2016. So to have it wrap back around, to go from a small space in 2016 to a 4,000 square foot space, to put together one of the very first social justice augmented reality exhibits in the country,
Hmm.
period, in which you would go into the exhibit, you would take your phone, and literally, when you would scan your phone over a mother who lost their son to gun violence or police brutality, it transferred into a photo of their son. And not only that, there was videos in which you can see videos of certain protests. You heard Mike Brown's mother, Leslie McSpadden, talk about her son and talk about healing. How when you first get a cut, there's that scar that sort of grows on it. And then when it starts to repair itself, it starts to itch and it starts to get irritated, right? And then it begins the journey of healing. So being able to do Optic Voices after Unspeakable led to the Ebony Canal. My work is all about change. I don't want to stream something that doesn't mean anything. I want to stream something that means something,
Hmm.
because it's all about the legacy, and we have to control our own narratives.
Yes,
Or
absolutely.
someone would control our narratives, right? So why not do it through the vessel of the arts? Because when you do uh uh activism through the vessel of the arts, you begin to understand when Paul Robeson said that, artists are the gatekeepers of the truth,
Hmm.
because we are. And we can package activism in a way where it's easily digestible to the masses to be able to interpret that with minimum kerfuffle. That's why we're on the block as artists.
Hmm.
That's why artists in incubation centers like the August Wilson African American Cultural Center are so crucial. And we need to not only support institutions like Awake, all arts programs. It's a proven fact that kids have 35% more likely to graduate when they're involved in art programs. So the fact that you begin to sort of take arts away and things of that nature, none of that is cool. It's also a fact that you could tell the vitality of a community based on the art that's around it. Seattle wasn't always all like that, but once Seattle started to really engage arts and education into their community, it blew up. So that's where we are. That's what sort of allowed me to have balance even through those.
Frida Kumsen said, love that key with minimum kerfuffle.
Okay, let's
Obvious.
go.
Thank you, Frida.
Okay, sis.
And then continuing in this vein of the canal between Optic Voices and Ebony Canal, you know, Optic Voice and Mama's Boy, it was hard hitting, in depth, media interactive exhibition. Just like you said, this project's no less committed. Again, you're working with mothers. I want to hear you say more about this deep dedication you have to showing such diverse narrative of Black maternity across your body of work. What
Mhm.
does it take to build these relationships so that you can assist with telling these stories? Because I imagine the process of getting a Leslie McSpadden to speak to you about her experience losing her son, Mike Brown, may be somewhat different than speaking with a woman who lost her child only 2 days after giving birth. And so,
Sure.
what is your relationship like with your collaborators, and
Yes.
why the focus on Black maternity personally for you?
Mhm. Well, one of the things, when working on Optic Voices, um, you have to build relationships, right? And you have to build relationships that are authentic and that are real and that are heartfelt. I'll tell you what. The women of Optic Voices will cut you in a matter of 30 seconds if you come in with that BS.
Mhm, mhm.
I'm gonna just keep it a whole 1,000 with you. You cannot go in BSing Tamir Rice's mother, Antoine Rose II's mother,
They've heard
Mike,
enough. Yeah.
Mike Brown's mother, Oscar Grant's mother. You can't. So it takes time to build those relationships in order to be able to extract the truth that is authentic. Because best believe when I was with Leslie McSpadden, she said, you know what I appreciate about you is that you are real and genuine because you have no idea how many people try to come into my life in order to extract something. And she understood, Sabrina Fulton, she understood that we are on a mission together.
Mhm.
So when they said, all right, tell me where you want to film, tell me where you want to do this photo, because people are forgetting about us. And what you're doing, young man, is you're doing something through the vessel of the arts that a lot of people don't want to do, they can't do, and they don't want to be bothered. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
my son is gone. Okay, so the story should be gone. So they understood the importance of art being a vessel and being that vehicle to get to the next level. So working on Optic Voices allowed me to go into the Ebony Canal with my honest truth and also respect to these mothers because they are the portals of life. They are the portals of humanity, Black women. Scientifically, if you want to go all the way into the science.
Mhm.
So there's a level of respect that when you come around a mom who is literally creating life, or knowing how to hug a mother who lost her child after 2 days, learning how to talk to them, but when a tear starts to fall down the side of their face, you know to be still and be quiet and listen to that mother. Even though that tear doesn't make a sound, it makes a sound in her heart, and you can't step over that.
Mhm.
So when you think about the Ebony Canal, what kept me strong is I thought about my own mother. And Jessica, I thought about my own life because I very well could have been someone that was lost.
Mhm.
So that is what I took into all of these projects is keeping the balance of keeping it real, being authentic, and wanting the truth. And with the Ebony Canal, we wanted the truth on how we can move the needle forward to save and to combat infant mortality.
Tell us about your collaborators. We want to know more about these incredible women that are featured in the most recent version of Ebony Canal.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the collaborators, when you think about Alana Uzola Daly, she's out of Maryland. And, she had some issues, preeclampsia, and a few other issues that she was facing that she sort of got through with her child. When you speak about Rachel Strader, she's a mother in her mid 30s, and she, still had a baby. Or a husband, and her family's beautiful. This was her sixth child.
Amazing.
Um, she had some issues of sort of going through kind of, some of the things to combat. We also followed Miss Peoples, uh, and her journey was a little scary because she had extreme high blood pressure and things of that nature, and there are some scary things where we almost had to deliver the baby early,
Mhm.
um, but she definitely came out on top. And then we have Larissa Lane, in which the film is pretty much dedicated to her son that she lost in 48 hours. And she did everything right. She had all the most incredible support. She went to all of her um appointments. We followed her, and things of that nature, but unfortunately we lost. um and it was hurtful. So, which is why she sets this film off and she ends this film, because we don't want to forget about Larissa's son,
Mhm.
because Larissa's son was all of our, it was a son for all of us.
We
And
become family through experience, and you
I mean,
experience something with him.
absolutely, absolutely. So, we had a chance to interview, folks like, VP Kamala Harris. We interviewed individuals from Rand Corporation, from Stanford University, University of Chicago, the CDC, Howard University. We're on tap, where Felicia Rashad is doing the voiceover for the documentary film, because it was almost like after we lost Maya, it's almost like Felicia Rashad sort of took on that motherly role. And when you hear her in this film, it just gives you goosebumps.
Mhm.
Um, so being able to have something that can, travel through film festivals, we're looking at, Prime, we're looking at Netflix right now. So all of these possibilities, the Ebony Canal will be in Sundance. I was just
Mhm.
at Sundance this last month. And
Congratulations.
thank you so much. And I was on a panel, and we showed the just a little small trailer, and people were blown away. Not because of me and director, whatever the case is, but they were just blown away by, like, wow, what year is it? 2024.
And
We're,
still,
we're still here, 2024. So, we got so much support from the Sundance Film Festival, and I had an opportunity to work with Dr. well, not doctor, I mean, he should be a doctor, but Coleman Domingo, and so
mm,
many other individuals, to be able to really tap in to what this subject matter means. This documentary film is going to be transformative, trust me, nationwide, and if not international as well.
how did you meet the mothers? They're
We
each
met
so
them.
unique. They have each like very different personalities, like different kinds of dynamics. How did you meet these like incredible people? How did you
Absolutely.
find these incredible people?
Yes, absolutely. So, we put out a call for Black mothers, to, film their journey and to get involved with the Ebony Canal. And uh, Alana, she hit us up, even from Instagram because, we were on Instagram. We put it all on social media. And Mariah Peoples, she's from Pittsburgh. Rachel Strader's from Pittsburgh. Brenda McDonald's from Pittsburgh. Um, Zaire Martin, she's from Pittsburgh. But we also wanted, the Pittsburgh element, but we also wanted the element, from a country standpoint. But Pittsburgh, oddly enough, has some of the highest rates of infant mortality due to environmental, social economic status and things of that nature. So we thought that, hey, listen, this is a national issue, but it's locally anchored here in Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
So we wanted to make sure that we had that representation, but they reached out, we interviewed via Zoom these women, and they spoke so passionately about wanting to make a difference through their own experience. Um, and everybody who sort of tapped on, we interviewed, we have over maybe 80 interviews, ranging from all the story arcs of this film. So the mothers are just all amazing. We're in contact with them all today. We created and cultivated some outstanding relationships.
You're going to be buying a lot of birthday presents.
I mean, listen, a lot of birthday presents, a lot of play uncles. I'm with
Hmm.
it. Yeah, and it's just overall, it's been an outstanding experience and one that has changed my life.
You spoke briefly about how you began at a place where you weren't really aware of all of the factors that went into this. But there's so much that, we've talked about. We have the environmental factors against our neighborhoods that often become rezoned when we've already owned property there to be near dumps or corporations that dump pollution. We have the social issues that we face, the socioeconomic issues that we face. But even if you were to eliminate all of that, there's still the bias that Black women encounter with individual nurses and doctors in the medical industrial complex.
Hmm.
How did you know where to start and how did you know where to stop? Because you could study this forever. You could read about this forever without even beginning to create a narrative in your head. There's always something new to know. How did you frame your research and get to a point where you said, I'm ready?
Well, shout out again to the Richard King Mellon Foundation.
Mhm.
They put us in touch with so many people around the country that understood the data, that understood kind of, we kind of have an idea of how we got here, but how from the data, how can we change it? So when you speak to, doctors at Stanford University, when you speak to doctors, at hospitals here in Pittsburgh, when you speak to experts like Dr. Larkins Pettigrew,
Mhm.
doing phenomenal work in this space. When you speak to, um, the Jada, the president and CEO at Healthy Start, when you speak to the president at March of Dimes,
Mhm.
right? You begin to figure out kind of where to start. It's almost like, hey, listen, you walk into a library, there are books everywhere. And it can be so overwhelming if you try to attack all of the books at once. But what Richard King Mellon Foundation and the experts there and the experts at Rand and Stanford, they were able to say, hey, listen, we know you're in a library that might not necessarily, you know, be friendly, but here are the books. Here's the data. Here's the numbers. Let us respect those numbers. Let us make sure that data remains focus and infant mortality remains the focus. Then boom, start to do the cultural. Because I tell you what, it might be difficult to connect with a Black woman. You know what I mean? If we sort of don't understand some of the cultural nuances that really connect that and that really allow these women to open up. I mean, they opened up to me, Jessica, like they opened up. And when you have team members um, like Janice Burley, when you have team members like Liz Speed, we
Mhm.
have team members like, you know, associate producers, Whitney Gale Benta, um, you begin to equip the team to help you wrap the cultural around it. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, there's that cultural thing where you can say to someone who might not be of African descent, um, do you know what a hot comb smell like?
Mm.
You know, do you understand it versus being able to see and know what a hot comb is, but also knowing that smell.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? The clinical is that it's a hot comb. And oh, you know, it was founded in 18 blah blah blah. And then there's the smell. Sunday morning before you go to church, before you iron your clothes, it's popping. So that takes a team in order to get the clinical and then marry it with the cultural.
Mhm.
So that is why I think the Ebony Canal is so fascinating. Even being the director, it's so fascinating how this all came together from outstanding teamwork and individuals that know that infant mortality is a problem for us all.
Another one of my favorite parts of the iteration of the documentary that I watched was that you included doulas and the facts about how having touch, having physical presence and touch, and having the expertise of a doula can reduce pain, improve the experience, and also increase the survival chances of the child itself. And so, can you tell us more about interviewing the doulas? Why introduce the doulas? There's a long tradition of doulaship in the African American experience because for so long you couldn't trust going to the doctor. So you needed your great grandmother or your great auntie or your
Period.
aunties who've done it before. You had to have community. And there are
Period.
those of us who never had that based on the circumstances we come from. But then there are those of us who can get doulas to step in and do that. Could you talk about the importance of doulas, why they're so important to our cultural experience, and their inclusion in Ebony Canal?
So I had to, I'm sorry, I'm plugging in my charger, y'all. I had to put doulas in there. Doulas are crucial to being able to have that spiritual connection to that mother that might not be able to get that spiritual connection or that energy from anything else around. You know what I mean? And you know, there's midwives and then there's the doulas. And just so you know who, you know, the folks who are watching, Erica Badu is a doula. Erica Badu delivered Summer Walker's baby. And there's that relationship with doulas that goes back to the beginning of time to really help coach you through the birthing experience, whether it's holding, you know, that mother's hand, whether it's encouraging that mother. Uh, Mariah People, she had a doula, and her doula was absolutely phenomenal at making sure she had whatever she needed, whether that's a pillow, whether that's support, whether that's a popsicle, whether that's going out, you know, adjusting certain things. And it was beautiful to see Mariah's journey because even her husband couldn't really connect like the doula would connect. And that comes from, you know, centuries upon centuries of how it used to be. You know what I mean? Um, and you know, even in the film, we I don't want to give too much away, but we highlight a doula who delivered almost over 3,000 babies because she was the go-to in the community
Mhm.
at knowing what to do, how to do it, and how to get it done because Black women couldn't go to hospitals. They had to do it somewhere in the back of the house or in the kitchen. And the beautiful thing is that a lot of Black mothers, or a lot of mothers in general, are starting to sort of go back to that, where they're giving birth in a tub or something like that.
I
And it's,
witnessed the birth with a doula in a kiddie pool outside.
listen,
Mhm.
and I can't wait for people to see this film. But Jessica, remember towards the end where I put that collage
Mhm, mhm.
of births? I'm getting goosebumps because I had to put that in the film so that you could really understand how miraculous giving birth is. In doing this film, I look at life totally different.
It's one of the greatest choices you can ever make.
Yeah, yeah, and when this film hits, people are going to be able to take away so much and learn so much about how we can save babies and
Mhm.
how we can eliminate infant mortality.
So now I want to get into you because you said there are dads here. There are dads in Ebony Canal. One of the dads you interviewed was like, I'm having a hard time because my father wasn't necessarily there. So I just know what I don't want to do, but don't necessarily know what's correct to do. And anyone that knows you knows how proud you are of being a dad, how dedicated of a dad you are, how involved you are, how you don't play. You're like, no, I'm here to be great through making great people, right? Why was the representation important to you? And how did it connect to your personal experience as a dad? What did you learn about yourself as a dad through this project?
Well, what I learned, just as a father, is just how crucial partners, birthing partners, fathers, husbands, how crucial that is at wrapping around the journey of giving birth. And I thought about my mother, and I thought about my dad as well. And I said, you know what? You can't really tell a story about infant mortality if we don't have representations for birthing people, supporters, fathers, husbands, and birthing partners. How can we say that this is going to take all of us if we don't have,
Everybody.
you know what I mean, in the picture? And Lamont Rucker, he had a lot of issues when his wife was pregnant. There were situations that Lamont spoke about in which the doctors would say, "Hey, listen, can you step out the room while we sort of deal with the mother really quickly? Um, you're kind of in our way." And he's like, "No, I shouldn't be in your way. I deserve to be here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Fathers deserve to be in this subject matter at helping to save babies." Demetrius, who spoke about not necessarily having his father in his life to the capacity in which, a father should be in his life. They have a great relationship now, but he spoke about never wanting to leave his wife's side.
Mm-hmm.
He can't even imagine not being in his child's life to make sure his child is giving the very best opportunity. But also in the film, we speak about women that don't have a father or don't have a support system, when it comes to fatherhood, but they do have a support system.
Mm-hmm.
So we really examine all of the components that really have to be packaged in this quest of infant mortality. So that is why I got a nice chunk in the film that talks about fathers. And you best believe fatherhood is one of the 9 beats of this film.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot wait to inspire Black men around the world that fatherhood is a blessing and not a hindrance.
Amazing. What did you learn that you didn't know before that affected a change in you? When you are embarking on such a project, it's very easy to start out being one person and come out being a totally different person. How did this work change you? And what did you do to practice self care during that transformation? Because when you make your projects, you don't just stand on the sidelines and record. You get in battle. You gear up and you go in. How did you practice self care? And what were the mental health journeys of the mothers like as well? How did you all come together as you're all trying to practice that mental awareness and protect your mental health through these processes?
Sure. Protecting your mental health is very important. Um, when you're taking a journey like this, you really have to go within or you'll go without
Mm,
healing, right? So I had to go within before even starting the Ebony Canal. I had to talk to my mothers that were in my circle, my mother-in-law, my mom Dukes, my sisters, my cousins. What is it like being a mom? What is it like to sort of, give birth, da da da. I mean, they stood on business to make sure that I knew not to go into this journey on some knucklehead.
mhm,
And I spoke to them about their mental journey, and it wasn't always good. Postpartum is a situation. It's real.
mhm,
Um, through this journey, one of the married couples kind of grew apart.
mm,
It was a difficult time because of sort of the mental state of the mother, not feeling supported, going to these appointments, getting kicked out in 15 minutes. Okay, cool. But boom, take this. Okay, I'll see you some other time. Not
mhm,
really feeling that love. So what it did for me mentally is it allowed me to give birth to new practices on how to step away and find joy within my heart. What genuinely brings you joy for this journey? My family, my wife, our daughter, Chewy. Chewy is my golden doodle mini, little dog. And then starting to get into painting. You know what I mean? In different vessels of how to sort of calm my mind. And then some of the mental journeys of some of the mothers were interesting. Every day wasn't a good day. We would set up some time to film. Today's not a good day to film. And then having the patience to make sure that we orbited around that mother to not force anything and to keep mental health first during this journey. Because you best believe that the mental health of the mother has everything to do with that child, which is why when we think of Black maternal health in infant mortality, you have to wrap it under Black maternal health. You have to. But this film, because there's other films out there that, focus on Black maternal health, but the Ebony Canal really dives into the data and the wherewithal of creating a new wave on how to save Black and brown babies.
Ime, how do you get a project like this funded? How do you fund a project at a time in an environment where even the data and its narrative sometimes does not move people who are determined to believe one thing over another? We see a lot of funding pools for the arts kind of becoming smaller, becoming not
Yeah,
available. And film has always been hard when it comes to funding because it's an
very.
expensive endeavor. You need to be able to create something to submit to even get the grant. So if you're emerging, it's hard enough. How do you fund a project like this? What were your strategies for getting the resources that you needed to take this journey?
Well, when you have corporations like the Rand Corporation, when you have philanthropic institutions like the Richard King Mellon Foundation, uh, Illumin Foundation, the August Wilson African American Cultural Center, they understand what needs to happen. So when you want to look at funding, you should look at institutions, philanthropic institutions, to help sort of fund this. I was recently appointed by the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, to be the vice chair of the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts. So I now represent 67 counties,
Incredible.
the whole entire state of Pennsylvania. Uh, and, we have funding for projects of this magnitude as well. But I would encourage anyone who wants to, do funding for arts programs and things of that nature is to crystallize your idea first, put together your work samples, and literally try to have everything extremely organized, all the way down to the last, page. Then once you have that with your work samples, I would definitely, go into philanthropic institutions that help support initiatives like your particular project and start to tap into it. Start to download the LOIs, which the letters of intents. Check out when their deadlines are to be able to submit that, and start to do it. Start to do your research on whatever project you have. What is a project close to yours that got funded? You know what I'm saying? And then sort of put that into that crystal ball, shake it, and I'm sure snow's going to move.
Thank you. I think that that's like a really important question because it's hard sometimes as an artist. You can look at the application or look at the LOI requirements, but you don't know how it should sound, how it should look. So that's great advice. Look at other projects that have gotten funded that are similar to your own. Try to reach out to those people, see if they'll share the application, see what kind of language, what kind of tone is being used. Because
Mhm.
sometimes your project is viable, but the way you describe it.
Yes, that part right there. And I'll just land the plane here. Please, 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 please make sure your work samples are solid. Um, I understand being frugal. Frugal is good. Being cheap, that's not going to really cut it. You got to make sure your sample, make sure your videos are fresh. You might have to make a sacrifice, but trust me, those work samples to be able to show a funder that might be on a building in a building 44 floors up, they don't necessarily, when you're 44 floors up and above, you can't look out the window and see what's going on the ground. So as your grant proposal takes that elevator up, make sure that the numbers match, make sure that the mission match, make sure the sample work matches, because when you get off on that 44th floor, they get it. They understand. They're like, wow, this is genius. That's how we're going to get to the bag. That's how we're going to get to the funding as artists. That's how we're going to continue to take care of our families and change the narratives of our communities.
And my last question is, when you undertake these projects and all of their complexity, what is it you hope for? Of course, as an artist, you cannot predict a particular response for your audience. You can't kind of drive the response that you necessarily want in each audience member you will reach. But personally, what do you hope for? You spoke before about finding solutions. Are those solutions that you hope come from the project a part of what you hope for? And what are some of those solutions you hope to see in the world?
Um, I hate to sound cheesy, but if the Ebony Canal saves one human being, mission is accomplished. However, we aspire to save thousands of babies when we're doing this work. When people see my work, I want them to download the intentionality for impact and generational change. with the Black Lives Matter for the deaf community. No one in my family's deaf. So what? Why not be an advocate? It changed generational legacies. Optic voices, mothers who've lost their sons, the process of healing. What does that look like? Nonprofit organizations, new foundations in their son's name, changing the generational landscape. Um, the Ebony Canal. That is an incredible project that is also a part of not only the legacy of me, the legacy of our collaborators, the legacies of our communities, the legacies of our nation, the legacies of the world, because it only takes one, to change the world. And that's what we're doing with this particular film. And I'm excited to be a part of it.
Emmai, all of the respect for your work, time, creativity, dedication, a humongous shout out to your mom's house. I've had the opportunity to work with your mom's house, and it is incredible. Every single person is incredible. Working with you is always such a pleasure. I learned so much, and I hope for the best, and I hope for 1,000 babies. This has been amazing. Everybody, we have another amazing filmmaker, Gilda Shepherd, coming to be with us on March 29th, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard
Yes.
Time. We're going to have a conversation about the prison industrial complex with her and talk about some of her work that's dedicated to the preservation of Black life and freedom. Emmai, I am honored to speak to you again.
Thank you
Please
so
come
much.
back every time you do something new. And I
You
hope
already know.
everybody, yes, of course. And I want
Peace
everybody
out.
to have a brilliant night and a brilliant weekend. Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
all. Take care.